Hey, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome and thank you for watching us today, taking your time to join us this discussion. I would like to start by asking apologies. We had issues, I think, a few days ago or a couple of weeks ago, and we're doing that again. I really appreciate everyone that's taking the time to join us today. So today we have an interesting topic to discuss, which is offshore and nearshore software outsourcing. Well, my name is Marcelo. Let me introduce myself. I'm the head of software delivery here at Sync Technologies. I joined Sync about 15 years ago, and most of the time that I focus on supporting our customers and partners in United States and Western Europe. Today we have three guests and colleagues here to talk about this interesting topic. Hello, Maria. I'm Maria from the channel company. Can you say hi and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Sullivan. I'm with the channel company. I have been in the offshoring outsourcing space for about 20 years now, mainly from the vendor side and helping the vendor find new business. But my role has evolved a little bit over the past few years, where I have been helping CIOs and solution providers find talent that is outside of the US. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to the discussion and conversation.
Thank you, Maria. We also have Olivier. Hello, Olivier.
Hi, my name is Olivier Poulard. I'm a digital transformation and software engineering executive. And I'm currently based in Atlanta. I've been offshoring for about 23 years. Mainly in India, Russia, Ukraine, Costa Rica, and Brazil. My largest program was the delivery of a mission-critical airline system involving 52 Scrum teams in 5 different offshore locations. So distribution, large-scale agile is possible with agile. And more recently, I've been on the vendor or partner side. So for the last 3 years, in fact. So I'm well-versed on both now the client and vendor sides. And finally, I would like to emphasize on the fact that I'm a very strong proponent of lean, agile software development and what I call one-shore delivery management. Onshore, offshore, one-shore. I think that's what makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. And we also have Andy. He's the CEO at Accelerance. Hello, Andy.
Hey, Marcelo, how are you? So yes, my name is Andy Hilliard, CEO of Accelerance. I'm based in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and Accelerance helps companies distribute their software engineering function globally, whether that's through partnerships or resources, or even captive centers of which they build themselves. But our mission is to help companies successfully distribute software engineering globally. That includes Asia, Eastern Europe, and of course, Latin America, and specifically, of course, Brazil.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Olivier, and thank you, Maria. I think that's going to be an interesting discussion today. Just a few recommendations before we start. There is a QR code on the video you're watching on YouTube. You can scan that. So this, you're going to be able to use to name it Slido, so you can submit questions there. So have a initial discussion, discuss some topics, and then at the end we'll save some time to take the questions and answer them, or at least discuss the ones that we cannot answer. Okay, so yeah, let's get started and go to the subject today. So I was researching and look at some data and history on offshore IT services, when it started, the rationale, motivations, and for that. So general consensus is that software outsource began in late 80s, and as most of you certainly know, the larger or the main exporter of IT services was, and it certainly still is, India, right, and Asia. So software development outsource came later, I would say. Companies started to outsource back office services. A lot of airlines did that. Call center operations, data center operations, or even business process outsourcing. It's a common, BPO to companies in India, or even open their own branches in Asia And the key factor, of course, for that was, one, reducing costs on their operations, but also a larger pool of professionals available in those countries. So I also brought some numbers here. Let me present some slides. So I brought numbers from the IT segments today. So comparing India, US, and Brazil, as of course I need to pump my own tires here, okay? So let me share here. Okay. So I hope you can see my slides. Andy, Olivier, Maria, are my slides appearing there?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, as I said, just a few numbers on the IT segment. First, from Ninja. So India is the largest IT exporter, and they have around 4.4 million employees total on the IT services, right? India exports dominate their industry. Most of the work is on exportation. The IT services are mostly exported, almost 80% of that, or the total revenue is to export. And of course, the United States account for most of that. 2/3 of the IT services exported in India are to United States. So we have, by the end of 2019, this data comes from, about 1.6 million IT professionals. So of course, comparing to India, we have like one third roughly, but we are the largest in Latin America, of course, because of the size of the country. So we account for about 43% of the total market in Latin America related to IT services. And IT services in Brazil, it grew like 1,000% in the last 10 years, from 1 billion reais to 10 billion reais. So it was this huge growth, but from a percentual perspective only. Because if you look at total numbers or the total, in dollar or reais, which is our local currency real amounts, it's a shy number, right? So it's only 2% of the sector represent. And why is that? Is Brazil has a strong economy for most of the time, and we're focused on commodities and strong economy. We never had this need to export IT services, but that, as I said, changed from 10 to 15 years ago. The exchange rate is positive. It's a good incentive for the country to export. So that changed a lot. I think the workforce as well. It's common now. Most of the people speaks English. It changed a lot from in the 30, 40 years ago. So just a few numbers on IT segments and specifically offshore and outsourcing. Okay, let me stop my presentation. Oh, I forgot US. That's not that important, right? That's small economy. So we have this next slide on the US economy. So US has 12 million employees by the end of 2019. And by the end of 2019 as well, that's roughly 1 million open IT jobs in 2019. And this data comes from, I can't remember the name of the source, here is in the slides down there. And also got some number from Gartner, and they say that in 2020, there should be this is a growing problem. It should be a 1.4 million in 2020, okay? So now, yes, I did finish my initial slides. Let me stop presentation here and close that. So, okay, Angie, so talking about offshore, nearshore, what do you think is the value proposition for a company to outsource software development to, a nearshore or offshore partner? What are the key benefits, biggest concerns or fear that organizations have that prevent them to move towards this direction? What do you think?
Me?
Yes, Andy.
Okay. I could have sworn he said Angie, and I was like,
Oh,
Who's
yeah,
that?
it's probably my accent. I'm sorry.
No problem. So we've been outsourcing to Latin America and all over the world for the last 20 years. And honestly, you might think the majority of our work ends up going to Asia and India, of course, like your intro talked about. But interestingly enough, a vast majority of our work actually ends up going to Latin America for a lot of the reasons that Marcelo you had mentioned, but more so the benefits of proximity and time zone overlap and cultural alignment is such a great value driver in the holistic measurement of a relationship, whether it be software development or otherwise. There are certain things that can easily be sent to Asia, like 24/7 support, but things that require collaboration, coordination, and people interacting with people, you cannot overlook the value of not only the time zone and culture, but if you really want to make a team holistically effective, the ability to travel and meet, albeit in this time that may be a tertiary ability to do so, but those things go a long way in creating a sense of teamwork and commitment towards end goals.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So, Maria, what are your thoughts on that? What are developer positions? It could be.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I agree with Andy there. Those were some great comments, Andy. But I would say the value proposition in going outside of the U.S. First of all, I want to say I did work for Gartner for about 8 years. They would always say about the talent shortage in IT. They were spot on. It is here. It is a growing, dilemma that we're in right now, being in the U.S. So the value proposition for an organization looking to outsource or offshore project is really the talent and expertise. Definitely number one. You are going to find the experts in, South America, for example, Brazil, Mexico. You guys have the great universities that have lots of graduates from IT and have that expertise. So definitely number one is the expertise. And also I would say ease of doing business. You want to look for a partner that it's easy to do business with. If you're looking for an offshoring partner, you don't want to create more work managing that partner, right? You want to take things off your plate. So you definitely want to work for a partner that's easy to work with, that also can communicate well, right? That can offer suggestions. What I have found with India is they take direction very well. What they don't do is they don't offer suggestions, advice, better ways to do things, maybe a different model that could be less expensive, could be done in less time. These are things I have found in Brazil that you are going to get from a value partner. And I would definitely have to put cost savings as last. What CIOs want in completing a project is they want it done well. They want it done on time. They want it done by experts. They want it done better than perhaps they envisioned. So I wouldn't really put a cost savings as a value. I would definitely put that last. Some of the fears in choosing a partner, I would say, and I think this stems from India again, is some of the security concerns, especially in software development. The organization or the client should own the IP. You want to make sure that it's not being kept and pirated somewhere else, right? And also scaling could be an issue, right? If you choose a partner, you want to make sure that the talent is there. Where are they finding the talent, and can they scale quickly if your project needs to grow quickly? So thank you.
Well, there's a lot of interesting points that you mentioned. One, you said that you need to communicate well, but I couldn't barely say Andy's name, so I'm a bit concerned now. But yeah, okay. That's interesting topics as well. I mean, I worked with partners in India, and there's a lot of successful projects there as well, and they certainly scale very well, as everyone knows. So, Olivier, you have experience with different partners, especially in India, right? Can you comment a little bit on that as well?
Yeah, well, I may have a slightly different perspective, but I think I agree with the gist of it. One of the value proposition is for me as a client to be able to focus on my internal stuff, the market changes, innovation, solution design, engineering, and final delivery to my client, as opposed to implementation, detail design, coding, unit testing, assembling. That's where you need the experts, obviously. So internal focus is important. Absolutely flexibility of resources, more or less having a resource pool on demand, if you will, scanning up and down. That's what I've been doing for over 20 years now. So scalability is absolutely a key point. And definitely I would put the cost at the very, very last, because when done properly, and then again, it's from modeling and personal experience since '97, you can realize up to about 40% savings with offshoring. But I've seen many, many cases where they were spending more money than they would have internally. So it really depends how it's done, right? As far as the benefits, and and then one more thing is what I found very, very interesting in India, Costa Rica, Brazil, and Russia, Ukraine, was the different thinking and ideas. Nothing is perfect, nobody's right, nobody's wrong, really, but it's just having all those people getting together and really bring different ideas, different thinking. That's how you come up with the best solution, really. As far as benefits and concerns, so we talked about the benefits. I'm not going to expand on that, but on the primary concern, loss of IP could be a concern. One of the biggest one that we had at CETA, for instance, was to get real value for the money. That we repeated many, many times over. What value do we get out of offshore for the money we spend? We had issues around proactiveness and valuable feedback, for instance. And it's all about timing, right? So if you get some information too late, then you will not be able to make those decisions. These are the primary concerns. If I look at the secondary ones, the fact that the teams are not always co-located can be a problem. For the most part, especially in Brazil, that's why I offshored with Brazil, for instance, is the time difference made a big, big difference compared to China and India or the Philippines. Another concern may be that you may feel, as the client, you may feel not being in control. And then on the vendor side, you may feel not belonging to the bigger picture. So we'll talk about this a little bit later as well. And of course, misunderstandings due to cultural differences and language issues. We talked about this. That's about it.
Okay, wow, very interesting. Thank you, Olivier. Let me double check if we didn't cover all the topics we had for today. Okay, let's continue with that. So we talk about the benefits, fears, concerns. Definitely security, IP is a main thing. It's not only in India, it's not only in Latin America, it's even in US, under any outsource that you do, even if that's local. That's certainly something important that if customers and partners should definitely be looking at. So let's move on. So most of the companies, regardless of their industry today, right, they stake their future on digital transformation, digital acceleration, concepts such as business agility, engaging other areas than IT in autonomous, goal-oriented teams to deliver value to their customers. That's a lot of what we see are the trend today, or even like for several years already. So do you believe it's easier, Olivier, to engage remote or distributed teams in this scenario, opposed to traditional offshore models from the years ago where we had, everything was well designed or planned, we had detailed requirements, detailed architecture, and then we like ship use cases to a partner in a software factory somewhere to build. Do you think it's easier? Do you think it helps? How does that fit with an offshore or nearshore partner? What do you think?
So from experience, again, both have pros and cons. I mean, there's no one size fits all or no one recipe. But generally speaking, I've been doing Agile now for the last 12 years. Before that, it was all waterfall, obviously. Generally speaking, if done well, again, it's if done well, Agile models are preferable to waterfall models. But as counterintuitive as it may sound, Agile requires a lot more discipline than waterfall if you don't want to spend most of your time on refactoring. So it all depends, right? So refactoring is a big issue with Agile. But if you've done well, you can reduce that refactoring dramatically. Now, one last word on this, and I'm sure Andy will have a lot of things to say on the topic as well. The key to me is to agree on guiding principles, engineering practices, having a collaborative mindset, and the thought leadership that will essentially rationalize and eventually optimize your models or your methodologies, if you will. You have to empower both on the client and offshore side. So it's not just one side or the other. Again, it's a true partnership. When we talk about partnership, it's both the client and the vendor working together towards the right solution so that essentially in the end, the client will make all the final decisions. But those final decisions have to be made at the right time. So that's why I was mentioning earlier, if you remember, about maybe lack of proactiveness. It's quite important for the offshore vendor to be more proactive in general. Andy, do you have anything else that you want to add?
So yeah, I'm in complete agreement with the path you're going down, and the commitment in the relationship, both from a contractual standpoint and also from a team building and partnership standpoint, has to be built from the ground up as if this is a part of your engineering function. The difference being is that there are two different entities. There are W-2 employees versus W-9 employees. But if you disregard that and focus on the building of an engineering culture that just happens to have people, whether it's in San Francisco Bay Area or Texas or Florida or Brazil or Vietnam or wherever they happen to be, and you take the proper steps as if you're building your own culture and extending your own culture, and you make that a part of your agreement, and you select your partner accordingly, and you onboard and train the resources and team accordingly, and you reward them and you communicate with them as if they are an extension, you're going to get the benefits well, we're in this reality today, and albeit we may be partially going back or mostly going back to co-located locations, companies want, and executives and CTOs want, the flexibility and the ability for employees to have a life balance. It's not a work-life balance, it's a life balance with less commuting, more flexibility, but the ability to function just as effectively, if not more effectively, in a distributed model. So if you go into this whole thing, not with this over-the-wall mentality, but this building an extended culture with two parties working together to do that, it's achievable.
Yeah, that's certainly a lot of interesting topics there as well. I think the trend I see when I look at some of our customers, initially was like just assign developers to the projects, and that changed a lot in the last few years. And as Olivier said, some of our customers, they are focused on their car business and initially outsourced the software development, but now we have other areas or skills that we also assign to projects like UI, UX research, data and analytics, software design, not just coding. And then I think this is important as well, not only assigning developers to the projects. Okay. So we discussed a little bit about cultural differences. Let's go a little bit back on this subject. So Maria, can you comment on cultural difference and what role does that play in distributed teams? What we should be aware looking at when you were, working with teams in different locations and countries and cultures?
Sure. So I have so many stories about culture. I want to start off by saying it is extremely important that that both sides know the culture. I in my role coaching vendor companies, I let them know, if you want to do business in America, 9 o'clock means 9 o'clock. In Latin America, they feel like they can stroll into meetings late. They can get on conference calls, 5 minutes after they start. You only have one time to make a first impression. So you want to start off on the right foot. So you definitely want to know the culture. The culture is definitely going to build the relationship and make the relationship stronger. So, I just feel that if both sides like each other, they know the culture, they respect the culture, they can move things forward quicker and have a better relationship. So a funny story I have is the first time I was in Korea, they get the business card. I had business meetings with, heads of government organizations, and, they're bowing, they're handing me their business card in hand. And, of course I followed along. I bowed, I took the business card. But in one of my meetings, I actually wrote on the business card, and the person just had a fit. It was just the eyes. So, it was just something I shouldn't have done. So it's real. And you know what, in the end, the deal didn't work out the way I wanted it to. So just simple little things. You want to know the culture. I think it's very, very important in building the relationship, taking things forward. And thank you.
Okay, Angie, comments on that? Have you did the same, like wrote and someone business card that you shouldn't?
In regards to cultural alignment, Latin America in general has a huge advantage because they tend to be extrovert and they tend to be collaborative, and their extrovert nature also lends itself to being, I'll say outspoken, but at least opinionated with regards to what their education and skills and experience has given them, and their ability to express themselves and to add value as opposed to just take orders, like you had mentioned in the first phase of what you're doing. And that I don't want to overgeneralize, but Brazilians are very much aligned with what I had just mentioned, whereby our partners in Eastern Europe tend to be, very smart, but very matter of fact. They'll express themselves when you're wrong, definitely, and they'll tell you when you're wrong. But they are relatively inflexible with regards to collaborating and debating and coming up with a shared solution. Asians in general tend to be more submissive and more sort of awaiting your definitive direction so they can pursue your course of action in the most efficient way, which is, there are times and places for all kinds of communication and cultural norms. A client has to take that into account when they decide, where or who they want to work with.
Yeah, I think it's one word that you guys mentioned is respect cultural difference. I think this is important. It's not about, applying your culture to your customer or someone. It's a matter of a mix of culture, I would say, and respecting the culture is important. I think we shouldn't underestimate cultural change, but my experience that's people regardless of where they live. I see teams like from different parts of the world. It was kind of odd at the beginning, but they will know how to work with each other. So that's an interesting point as well. Respect at the beginning, know the culture, but at the end, people will learn how to work with each other.
Marcelo, that's a really great point, in that when when we bring cultures together, regardless of where they are, regardless of what country or region, people can learn and they can adapt. And if sometimes it requires facilitation by a third party like Accelerants to help train different cultures on expectations and how to communicate and what people respond to and what people take offense at, regardless of what culture you in, or regardless of what generalization you might naturally fall under. But as long as people are brought together and they're trained together and they that you share the expectations and you keep working on it, people adapt and introverts become more extrovert and things like that. So,
okay, Olivier, would you like to comment a little on that topic as well, on cultural difference?
Yes, very shortly. I think it's a two-way street, right? So it's not just about the client understanding the culture of the vendor or vice versa. And the way I'm taking it is that I've had very, very good results in India, in Brazil, of course, with you guys, but in Costa Rica and Ukraine and Russia as well. And really what I did at first was to understand first to be understood. I mean, it's a famous phrase, obviously. But if you spend the time to understand the other side, then they will spend the time to understand you as well. And then through those guiding principles that I was talking about earlier, it formalizes basically the way at a very, very high level, and that's the key, in fact, a very high level, how we're going to work together. Because in the end, you want to make sure that, in Brazil, for instance, you have a certain way of doing things, which is not exactly compatible with the way it's done in Ukraine or India, etc. But in the end, you get as good as results. So appreciating the cultural differences and the fact that things can be done differently is quite important. And in fact, I've realized through this experience that the best solutions come from different brains and different cultures sometimes. So mixing all this, that big program that I was talking about involved Russians, Ukrainians, and Indians. And Indians from the north and Indians from the south. Two very different cultures as well. And by the way, foods. So, we had amazing discussions. We managed to get them all together, multiple times to work on solutions together in a very respectful way. But again, understand first to be understood, I think, is the key.
Okay. And do you think the size of the program of the team or that you are running makes any difference on that? I mean, you mentioned, the program that you took over or conducted was like more than 100 people. So do you think this size of the thing you are working on, does that have a significant impact on that, you think?
So I've offshored with as little as one Scrum team of 8 people and as big as 52 Scrum teams of 10 people each, plus the solution architecture and independent testing, delivery, etc. So we were about 800 people at the most. No, to me, it doesn't make any difference. The guiding principles have to be adapted to the size, have to be adapted to what is being done. But overall, from a cultural differences, I don't think, whether you offshore to Brazil or a mix of, as I said, I had a mix of Ukrainians and Russians. Even those two are very different. And with 2 offshore companies, one in Delhi and one in Bangalore. And those 2 Indian companies were very, very different, culturally very different, and the people were very different. And yet we managed to work all together and deliver within 21 months that mission critical system. I will say one more thing is, we all know this famous phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I don't think we take it seriously enough. But culture can eat strategy for breakfast. So if you take that into account, if culture is an integral part of your program, then you can be successful. If you disregard culture, you will definitely be unsuccessful.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Regardless of the size.
Okay. Thank you, Olivier. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. We tend to think that cultural differences are just geographical, but not really. You mentioned like different companies, they have totally different cultures. That's a really interesting topic. So, okay, we discussed about the benefits, fears the companies may have. They should look at these cultural differences or respect them. So what would you recommend, Maria? So what would you recommend to companies that are looking for an offshore or nearshore partner to extend their capacity, to be more competitive, to reduce risks? I mean, they never did that. What will be the initial steps? What will be your recommendation
Sure.
to those companies?
Sure. I mean, I always recommend, I mean, you have to do your homework. You have to do the evaluation process, right? So in the end, you have to find the right partner. So you're looking for many things to find the right partner. You definitely want to go with a company that has the expertise in the project that you're looking to fulfill, right? You want to hire the experts. You want to hire a company that can communicate well. You know, maybe the person that you're liaising with is not the person that is going to be in charge of your project. Definitely want to get the project manager on the phone, make sure that that first of all, they have good English skills, that they can communicate well with your team, that both teams can communicate together, that they think outside of the box, that they can offer suggestions, that they're not just, you know, a robot taking orders, right? So I think the suggestion piece is really important in your end result. You know, and finding someone easy to do business with. Again, when you're outsourcing a project or looking for talent to fulfill a project, whether it's in the short term or long term, you want to take something off your plate, right? You don't want to use a lot of your time managing your partner. So the ease of doing business is very, very important and a huge selling point to me. You know, lastly, I would say you want to make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure that the company you're working with can scale. How big are they? By nature, when we are selecting an offshore partner, the project starts small. So it starts with a small project, proof of concept. Great, this company is wonderful to work with, but now I would like to quadruple the number of resources. Well, can they do that? Can they double the resources? Can they quadruple them? So you want to make sure that they can scale when you want them to scale. But also an interesting question you want to ask them is, if you're scaling for me, where are you finding the talent? Is the talent in-house with developers, engineers that have worked for the company, or are they using an outside agency to find the talent? Because in that case, you know, there's a risk factor. The company may be hiring outside talent that they've never worked with that, you know, may not show up for work on time. They haven't had the ability to prove themselves. So make sure they know the talent if you need to scale. So I think that's about it. Hope I didn't talk too much.
Yeah, let's see. Angie, do you have any other topics after Maria's comments? What your thoughts on that?
Well, I'll go ahead and focus on a couple of areas, macroeconomic areas. Let Olivier also focus on maybe the operational or part. But you want to look at the country, obviously, and where they are in the phase of political and economic stability. There's always a time and a place. Every country has its ups and downs. Like anything, you want to ride a wave of positive stability with positive like U.S. dollar strength to the local currency. Looking at the available talent pool and how the company will recruit, train, and retain talent, whether it's locally or multi-locationally. Distributing that talent pool over multiple locations is obviously a good thing because you have redundancy and more flexibility and more speed to hire. And also looking strongly at the leadership and track record of the partner that you're looking to work with. You know, are they outsourcing 95% of their revenue? Are they providing services to external, maybe English-speaking countries? That's a good indicator of a company that is built to outsource and are hiring people that are expert in cross-cultural and cross-country communication. And that's obviously what you want. You don't want to be investing in companies that are trying to learn the business. You want to find companies that, you know, are built from the ground up to outsource. So yeah, that's a couple points. Marcelo?
Those are some great points.
Yes, so I completely agree with you guys, Maria and Andy. I'd like to add maybe one little thing is you know, if you really want to do, if you're looking for an offshore or nearshore partner to extend your capacity, to be more competitive, reduce risk, etc. The first question is the first thing is really to define your primary reason to offshore. If it's the wrong reason, you will have the wrong results. So first thing first, define the reason to offshore. And as Maria mentioned, you know, we're talking about flexibility. We're talking about scalability, cost reduction, but talent, etc. And then what are you going to do with your own staff? How are you going to revector, you know, tactical activities and maybe focus more on strategic endeavors, for instance? So these are the things that you need to ask yourselves. To follow up on what Andy said, more on the operational standpoint is to make sure that everybody understands. And when I say everybody, it's both on the client side and the vendor side. Make sure that everybody understands why we are all engaged and how we are all going to make a difference together. And that's, okay. I mean, people talk about attrition. So, you know, in the end, that will affect your business. If you want to be more competitive, reduce risk, etc., you know, you want to reduce the attrition. I mean, the attrition rate can be up to 25, 30% offshore. And we've seen this even more sometimes. I managed to get 7% and less. And we're talking about over a period of 12 years, 7% or less. Simply because I spent the time to explain, and for people not to explain, but for people to understand why they were engaged and how they would make a real difference. I think it's quite important. It's linked to the culture as well, by the way. And then to each culture, you take it differently, obviously.
Okay, yeah, I think everyone brought a lot of good topics, and I think Olivier brought something really interesting here at the end as well. It's not just about selecting your partner. Maria mentioned, make sure you do not talk only to the sales guy, right? Talk to the real people that will work on the job. So we do that. We are engaging with with prospects or new customers. We take a team, talk to a prospect and see how they feel. That's what it's important. But another topic Olivier mentioned is people needs to be engaged regardless if they are a vendor or not. So this assuming that you already selected a partner, make sure you give them the team a business context and not only tasks. So this is really, really important. I know from a vendor or partner perspective that it makes a huge difference for our teams that we are engaged. We are not looking at lines of code that we deliver. We are looking at the common goals that the company has, regardless of what that is, if it is getting new customers or improving our revenue. So this common goals, this is definitely key. And I think those are really, really interesting points you all brought here. So let's move on.
If you don't mind, Marcelo, I'd like to add something quickly, because I think Maria said something extremely important. You know, selection, I'm going to go back to that selection of your vendor. It's quite important. What works well for one company may not work well for another one. And from experience, I've seen this multiple times where if there's no cultural fit in the end, between the vendor and it's like a marriage, if you will. There's a point where you don't want to get divorced. So you want to make sure that you have this engagement period, if you will, where you check that the culture will fit on both sides. It's quite important. The selection of the vendor is quite important.
Okay. So let's move on, and then we'll save some time for the questions people are sending. So we already talked about the motivations, cultural difference, recommendations to customers. So let's talk about what can go wrong, because things eventually go wrong, right? So Angie, what are the key risks and common pitfalls organizations should be aware of when initiating a nearshore offshore, initiating a engagement with a nearshore offshore partner, and maybe there are cases they shouldn't really, they are not ready for that. So common pitfalls and what people should be aware, organizations should be aware when they are starting an engagement like that.
Well, it comes back around to what we were talking about earlier, is forming a relationship and an operating model and a collaboration model where there is joint accountability to one another, and avoiding a transactional, litigious-based relationship where everything is based on SLAs and handoffs, as opposed to building teams that are working cohesively together. That's one pitfall that I often see, that clients are not committed and don't frankly understand the difference between traditional outsourcing in a very transactional model and sort of modern outsourcing, and specifically software development outsourcing, which is a completely different model than call centers, where it's just this isn't a widget-based endeavor. This is a collaborative, human-based. You're building something. You're building software that is going to improve, whatever a customer is looking to improve. So, having that mentality, having that commitment, establishing that accountability, and putting together programs to evaluate the effectiveness and the culture that you've created between a client and a partner, and understanding the ebbs and flows of a relationship. Like Olivia was saying, it's a marriage, and sometimes if you don't have consistent measurement, benchmarking, 360s, and issue resolution among people that are working together, these little problems that you don't notice will begin to manifest themselves and grow over time, and then become the stick that broke the camel's back.
Okay, Maria, comments on that, like common pitfalls and issues or things that organizations should be aware of?
Sure. So I completely agree with you, Andy. Those are all great points. So, I think communication is key, right? You have to make sure that each side communicates, that they have those weekly meetings, even if there's really nothing to discuss. Just always put it in your calendar. You're going to have a meeting. The meeting could last maybe 5 minutes, or you could block off an hour. But just to stay in communication. There's something else called what Gartner used to call an error rate. So this doesn't pertain to Brazil because you're on the same time zone, but if you choose to use a partner in India or China, and you're from a U.S. organization that works, let's say from 8 to 6, your partner in Asia has instructions. They know what to do. You've had the early morning call or late night call, but there is a period of time, maybe 8, 10, 12 hours where they are just moving along, doing what they're told. And if something's going wrong, you're still being charged as a client, right? Because you're not available to answer questions for them if they come to a standstill. So there's a possibility that the vendor company in Asia could keep moving in the wrong direction. In the end, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So the nice thing is you're not gonna, this isn't gonna happen if you choose a partner in Brazil, because you are in the same time zone. And then lastly, I don't know if we, covered it already, if we've said too much about it, but the scaling issue. You want to make sure if you like your partner, let them know beforehand that you envision something else. Can this vendor company grow with you? Do they have the ability to scale?
Okay. Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic on scaling. This is an issue we have on, day-to-day operations. Like a common pitfall I see some of the customers we have, they want to go with a kind of staff augmentation because that gives a sense of control, right? I'm going to interview everyone and I know every individual. Like it gives a sense of control, but this doesn't scale well. And it's common that we'll go through rounds and rounds of interviewing people, only the top-notch developer. And then at the end of the day, the project itself is not that complex that demotivates people. So this is a really, really common pitfall. Companies want to scale, but they want what they think they have the sense of control, or they think they have more control if they go with staff augmentation. This is really common. Staff augmentation does work. I mean, if you have a small operations, 2-3 developers, if you want to scale, we have customers with several squads, like each squad with 10 people. Do you have the bandwidth to interview 40, 50 people? So this is kind of it takes a little bit time to, work together and gain the trust, but the companies or the customers that we scale better, that they trust, that will bring the right individuals to the team. So this is a really, really common thing. And not only have developers, try to have dedicated teams, like feature teams working on something. This works very well as well from a scale perspective. Have a Scrum Master, have a product owner, or you can call a proxy product owner located in your with your partner. That helps a lot with scaling and make sure that you are not, too busy to take care of individuals, but you take care of the relationship and you take care of the delivery and not the individual. So we're almost running out of time, but I certainly want to hear Olivier's comments on that, common pitfalls on companies that start doing offshore and nearshore.
Yes, so I can talk about fixed price contract versus T&M, for instance. So those who want to go full T&M they want full control over their program, and it's not necessarily the best solution. On the other side, many companies will go fixed price contract because they think that, well, we agree on requirements and we get a product. Well, that's not exactly, it doesn't work so well for digital solutions, and especially if you have an agile operating model. So fixed price contracts are rarely a good solution. Capped T&M are a better solution. And I would like also to add the fact that some clients sometimes want to have penalties in their contracts, and that's fine. But if you start using penalties, what does it say about your partnership? That does not work very, very well. And the vendor will find some ways anyway to recoup the money that they will lose through penalties. To me, and just as a final word, is offshoring is an investment, because we're talking about a new operating model, essentially. It's an investment. Investment means return on investment. So you have to realize that initially you have a loss of productivity. You're moving your development from in-house to offshore. So it's like anything else. You will have a loss of productivity and maybe a higher cost. But a plan must be agreed upon to improve over time, to gain productivity and achieve lower cost. And more productivity is good for everybody. It means better time to market. It means lower costs overall. That's what a true partnership, and I'm joining Andy and Maria on their definition of partnership. They're absolutely right on that.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. Let's take a look at the questions we got here. So the first one is, in a world where we have no physical barriers, what are the main challenges for offshore initiatives once you are competing with the whole world nowadays? Can you take that one, Olivier?
Okay, so with no physical barriers, what was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, in a world that we don't have more physical barriers, what are the main challenges for offshore initiatives once you are competing with the whole world? I'm assuming that's competing with, for talent, I'm guessing.
Well, that's even better. You have access to the whole world for talent. It's a lot better than having access to your own country only. I mean, I've seen this so many times. That's the value of offshoring.
Okay, that one was easy, huh? Okay, let me.
Else maybe.
Yeah,
that's the right answer.
Yeah, let me take a tough one here. I'm not even sure I wanna do that one, but let's see what you guys have to say. Without worrying about overgeneralizing, what would you be your suggestion for improvements for Brazilian partners, be it technical or behavioral? Maria.
So I have the pleasure of working with companies from around the globe. And I mean, I'm not being biased when I say I love the Brazilian culture. I love working with Brazilian companies, especially in software development, digital transformation. I mean, maybe just making sure that the follow-ups that you're on time, a little early. I know you guys are on time, but I think even if you got to meetings a little earlier, and I don't know, there's just so much I love about Brazilians.
Hey, Maria, you were being nice. You were being nice to me.
Bias.
Yeah.
So maybe someone, Olivier or Andy, you have something to say on this, but.
Well, I'll comment that the question in itself is sort of unfair. It's asking don't be general, but all of Brazil. How would you improve all of Brazil? And that is kind of unfair because each company has its own culture and its own leadership and its own standards. So if I were to start a company in Brazil with Brazilians, I would make sure that I have that I'm hiring and training people to understand the culture of your end audience, your client's audience, and to replicate that as much as possible because that's what they're paying for. They expect people to understand and abide by and adjust their mannerisms, like Maria said, with regards to a client's culture. In the United States, it's having a professional working environment, being on time, being extrovert, collaborative, consultative, having professional, respectful debates and things like that. So I'm not making recommendations because there are companies that have set up that culture because they understand who they're serving, and they make sure that these cultural guideposts are well understood. And then there's companies that say, well, we are who we are, and we're going to act like we act, and unfortunately, that's not typically what customers are paying for. They're paying for that alignment, and that's my recommendation is to make sure that you fully understand and abide by those alignment rules.
Okay, so let me see if we have time for one more. There's one here regarding difficulties, impediments, constraints besides the language and time zone to do offshore and nearshore. I think we covered that. Olivier, there's another one here. Any particular role? I think you mentioned focus, local teams to car business and etc. And so, is there any particular role you think that we should not offshore, and why?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. So I will refer to the Chinese puzzle. Earlier, we talked about IP, loss of IP, etc. What I did every single time on all my projects is that I was holding the last piece of that Chinese puzzle. That piece that what you insert, that it holds everything together, and without it, nothing works. hold that.
Okay.
The critical piece of your software, the critical piece of your system, the thing that will make sure that that system doesn't work. If you're afraid of losing your IP.
Okay. Andy, comments on that? Like any particular role shouldn't outsource?
Role that you should not outsource. Well, Olivia, that was a great answer, by the way. I really like that, and I've written it down. I'm at a loss. I'll pass to Maria.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't outsource the CEO role, right? If you want to do that, I'm open for the position. Maria, any comments on that? You're on mute.
Hi, sorry. So just to answer it a little bit differently, I guess, you know, if you're going to outsource, just make sure it's an expert talent that you're looking for, something that's not offered, you know, everywhere else, right? So I would just say maybe just not generic, you know, you're outsourcing because of the talent, because you can't find the talent. So, you know, just make sure that it's a role that is of good talent.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We are on time, 2 minutes late here. Want to respect everyone's time here. It was a great discussion. I think everyone enjoyed it. I certainly did. I was supposed to follow a script here, but I did. So there was something I forgot to say at the beginning, which there's a evaluation form and the individual. Please take your time and fill in this form. It's a good feedback from us on what you thought about this presentation. So would like to thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Olivier, for your time. It was great to have you guys here. And thank you, everyone that attended.
Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.